Well, folks, we made it to season 7. Welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast. I am your host, Josias Abriel, and published author. Speaking of published author, before the episode starts, make sure to go check out my books. They're available on Amazon, and the link is in the episode description below. Go ahead, get you some healing. One's a poetry book about overcoming pain and trauma and stuff like that, and then the other one's a self-awareness interactive journal notebook. So get you some healing. You're worth it. Another thing that you're worth all the love in the world. You're worth all the healing in the world, and I'm glad that you're here with us today to heal together. You are loved, you are valuable. This is your sign. Alrighty, enjoy the episode. Bye, folks! Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host and published author, Josias Abriel. I don't know if y'all can tell, but I'm still recovering. Still recovering, folks. So if I seem a little tired, it's probably because it was COVID. Um, okay, I don't know. Well, I didn't get tested, folks, but I had like all the symptoms that I had when I first had COVID. So I was just like, I'm just gonna stay in my room and recover. Yeah. Um, love that. But folks, with us today, we have Aaron. Folks, we're gonna be talking about through Aaron's eyes, the messy, powerful journey of reclaiming our humanity through being seen, and also shifting men's paradigms. But before we get into that, Aaron, tell us a little bit about you. Let us get to know you. Any credentials? What do you do? Things of that nature. Whatever you want to share.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I really appreciate it. Um, I think the first thing that I would say is you know, I'm a product of I'm a self-made man. I didn't really grow up in a really great environment. I didn't have any help. And I can honestly say that everything that I have done up until this point in my 46 years of life, I have done with just a pure amount of grit and determination. Um, I recently, probably the past 5 years, pivoted in careers. I worked in the film industry for 15 years and decided that it wasn't serving me anymore and that I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. And in that same process, I realized that I have a bigger purpose. And I think that it's really kind of an interesting story. In my job, I found people who would never go to therapy or never talked about their past coming up to me while we're working on a film set and just pouring their entire life out to me. And I never really understood how this happened or why it happened, but it just always happened. And I'm talking about these older men who literally have never even talked to their closest, their wives or their closest partners about issues that feel safe expressing to me, some random guy that they happen to be working with on a TV show.
Mm.
And it started to happen so often that it was getting in the way of my actual job. And I had this assistant that I worked with all the time, and he had a very funny way of of reminding me that we need to do our job. He used to call me Chatty Cathy. And he would say things like, "Hey, Chatty, come on, let's go. We're moving on," or this or that. And he was really good about kind of keeping me on task because I would get roped into these conversations, and it wasn't anything that I started. People would come to me, and when I realized this one day when we were on a show, and he was, being that sarcastic person that he is, my assistant. And I kept thinking, I was like, what? How do I monetize this? Like, because this just naturally keeps happening to me. It's inherently in me. There's something about my presence that is allowing safety and things like that. So recently we had the writer strike that kind of decimated the film industry, and it kind of got me thinking, how do I actually, like, what can I change, what can I do that is more involved in my purpose? And that story that I just told you came to mind, and I really kind of realized that I have this sort of superpower of allowing people to feel safe, and that I can actually use that for purpose and for helping and to being of service to other people. So I at that point it became very clear to me that sort of life coaching and facilitating men's groups and things like that is what I'm kind of supposed to be doing. And that's what led me here to being on this podcast now, and getting my story out there.
Wow. It's really beautiful. Yes, you must have a very unique vibration emanating from you that allows people to feel that vibration, and with that vibration comes, safety, comes presence, it comes, making them feel seen, even when you're not even trying. So that's what's pretty cool. Yeah. Um, so w- what am I able to ask what shows you like worked on?
I I've worked on tons of different shows.
Okay.
Mostly I was what you would call a day player, where I would come
Mhm,
in for a couple of different days when somebody needed a break, or during COVID, I would come in and like cover people who got COVID because they would have to do the 10-day, isolation before they could be cleared back to work.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean, sure, you can, like I worked on a show called Big Sky. It was like,
mhm,
I think on ABC or something for a couple of weeks. I did a lot of the action stuff for a movie that came out on Netflix called Axel Foley. It was like the Beverly Hills Cop movie.
mhm,
Um Trying to think. I also did a lot of concerts, like live concert movies. Like I
mhm.
did the Taylor Swift concert movie that came out in
Mm,
the theaters.
yeah.
I worked all over the place. I
Yeah.
was a hired gun, so to speak.
Oh, okay, awesome. That's pretty cool. Um, okay. So, um, our topics. The messy, powerful journey of reclaiming our humanity through being seen. Aaron,
Mhm.
let's
Yes.
let's start there. Why that discussion point? Why, like, what's your story behind that? Take us through that journey. Um, take us through that journey, Aaron.
Being seen and heard was probably I've done a lot of work on myself and on this personal in my personal journey that really just started, 3 or 4 years ago. And I realized in some of the shadow work that I've done is that being seen, heard, and accepted is one of my biggest shadows. And it was something that sort of plagued me and plagued my career, plagued my life, um, for most of my life, really. Uh, I used to see myself as a victim of my circumstances, a victim of growing up in a traumatic household. And in that shadow work, I realized that I'm not actually a victim. I just need to face those things in order to get past that. So for me, really being seen and heard is a real core value, core issue. I grew up in a pretty toxic environment. I grew up in a divorced household. My parents were never married. My mom left when I was a young kid, like 1 or 2 years old, And I grew up with my dad and my stepmom. And if I'm going to be very clear and honest, like my stepmom wasn't the nicest person growing up. And I didn't really, for the most part, didn't really grow up with a mother figure. Didn't really have that like motherly love like most people in a normal household get. And that created that created that core shadow of wanting to be seen, wanting to be held, wanting to be validated and loved. And it's taken a lot of work to really to heal that hurt child inside of me. I'm a big advocate of inner child work
Mhm.
and really expressing and having a connection with your inner child. And I've done some pretty phenomenal sort of esoteric meditations and deep meditations to access that inner child and to create a safe space for that little boy. um and in doing that, it has just it's I like to use the example of, do you know those global warming videos where you see like Alaska and there's like a glacier and like a giant, glacier is like falling into the ocean and like floating away, and it's this big
Mhm.
dramatic like, like
Yeah.
thing, right? So the example that I like to use is, if my trauma or my, childhood good stuff were that glacier,
Mhm.
in some of this work, the inner child work or the shadow work would be me physically taking like an ice pick and hammering huge chunks off of that trauma and allowing it to just float away.
Mhm.
It's been vastly helpful, and it's something that I now try to help out with my clients in my coaching business, and helping men and women as well. But I work with a lot of men in accessing their inner child and having that connection, and just really being open to listening to your heart and listening to what is what's going inside in your body and having that awareness.
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah. When you mentioned, so, thank you for sharing that with us, especially, of the traumatic, household. Um, I'm not saying this is this way for everyone, but it is a reality for many to where, oftentimes, like, the trauma starts like in the house. I'm not saying that's everyone, folks. I'm just saying like it's definitely a reality for many people, um, me included. Um, but through my research, I have noticed like trauma, especially at an early age, um, especially when it's from like those that are supposed to be like parental figures. You know, that can sort of like stick with us and shape us. And I don't necessarily mean shape folks in a negative way. I mean it in a more subjective way. It's a part of our story. It, can influence our decisions, whatever those decisions look like. I know for me, like I went through like let's see, a path of addiction, but I also went through a path of self discovery, a path of redemption. So it was just a mix of things. And I'm now getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not even, for me, for my journey, I'm in a point now in my path and journey where I'm starting to not say like, oh, I did this bad thing. I'm starting to say, it was just a part of my journey. So, I say all that to ask, like, when it comes to like the toxic households and environment. There's many people, myself included, that at first didn't realize that it was toxic because it was the norm. It's what we always had. So can you, for like those of us who don't know, whether they don't know that they've experienced it or whether they just don't know in general or want to know, could you tell us a little bit more about like what that looked like what that toxic environment looked like? Now you don't have to. I respect boundaries on here, but yeah, if you could share that with
I
us.
will 100% share that because I think it's important. I think it's really important, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people don't understand the environment that they grew up in, and, there are a lot of people even, for me, I grew up in a product of divorce, right? So, you know, unfortunately, my stepmom and my dad had another child, had my younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, and there was a lot of favoritism that happened, and it was very apparent and very clear, very, like, in your face,
Mm,
and that's one example of that, but there are a lot of people who grow up in environments where they are not a product of divorce, and it's just the environment that they live in where for like, a good example is, like, things are just brushed under the rug and never actually talked about and suppressed, and that wasn't my environment, but, that is some other people that I know, they grew up in those kind of environments, and in a lot of this work that I've done, I think what is really important, and I'm a huge advocate of this, and is parental modeling.
mhm,
In psychology, they say that you we as young children from the age of 2 to I think 8 years old is when we get the most influence, and you see how your parents show up in relationships. You see how a woman is treated or how a man is treated, or and all of these things. Those things are the models that inherently stick with us in our subconscious, and it is really, really hard to override that later on in your adult life, because that modeling is sort of ingrained in us, right? So if you grow up in a toxic environment where, I'll use myself as an example, like I grew up with some very emotionally immature parents. They didn't have the emotional awareness to handle their own emotions, let alone a child's,
mhm,
who they were responsible for raising. And so for me, a lot of the times, growing up, I was walking on a lot of eggshells,
mhm,
wondering that if I said something or I did something, if that was going to create a huge emotional explosion,
mhm,
or and that created a lot of fear, and it created a lot of like hyper awareness
mhm.
or hyper vigilance at a young age. And that's one example, but I just want to kind of highlight quickly, like one thing that this just came to me as I'm explaining this, is that there are also some positive sides to that. Like you know for me, I have an insane ability to read people. I can read somebody's emotionalness. I can read somebody's vibe. I can read a person on how they're talking to me, whether they're being truthful or not. And I thought it was this superpower, but really, I think it really comes from is just how I grew up. Like that's the
Yeah,
product
like
of.
survival. What do I call it? What do I call? I think I call it survival symptoms. Yeah.
That's a great term. Like, but it's also like for me, it's a superpower.
Yes.
I can smell bullshit from a mile away. Like a
Mhm.
mile away. I can
Yeah.
tell when somebody's not being truthful. In past relationships, I had been cheated on, and I knew, like, well before that conversation came up. Like, it's you feel it. I can tell when somebody's, again,
Mhm,
like, somebody's not being truthful, somebody's lying, I can smell it a mile away.
mhm,
I used to say you can't bullshit a bullshitter,
mhm.
but I'm not a bullshitter.
Right,
Like, you just can't bullshit me.
right.
and that just I think that comes from as I've been doing so much more work in psychology and learning about all of, all these ways that our subconscious mind works. That's the product of how I grew up.
Mhm.
And that's, as I have worked past those things and are obviously like very comfortable talking about it and expressing it, I start to see the positive sides, because I can't do anything about the negative sides. I can work through it and not hold on to it and not treat myself as a victim anymore.
Mhm.
But I can also have the opportunity to see how that has actually helped my life, helped me get where I am today.
Mhm.
It it this there's an idea that just came up to me right now as I'm saying that. It's like I explained earlier that I'm a self-made man, and I know exactly where that comes from. There's one particular moment where I was in the 7th grade, and my dad really, really wanted me to make the basketball team.
Mhm.
And I tried out, and I really wanted to make the basketball team myself because I wanted that positive response from my parent, and I didn't make the team. And the disappointment that I saw
Mhm.
in my parents at that moment just just destroyed me.
Yeah.
And then not too long after that, I overheard a conversation, um, that my a parent, I don't know which parent it was. It was a long time ago. They said, if he doesn't get a basketball scholarship, he's never going to amount to anything. And that to this day still sits with me.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's a little bit rough, but again, to flip it into the positive, that moment is when I learned about grit.
Mhm.
And that was the moment when I realized, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what you think. Now I'm gonna take with that thing, what you just said right now, and I'm gonna put that on my shoulder. That's gonna be my chip on my shoulder." And what I did after that is I played basketball every single day for an entire year. And I tried out for the 8th grade team. I made the team, and by the end of the season, I was the MVP of the team. I went from barely making the team to being the MVP by the end of the year because I was so determined to prove that person wrong that I am more than just, like just this basketball scholarship, or I'm more than just, like like I'm more it's more than just not making the team.
Mhm.
And I've carried that. Michael Jordan actually explains this sort of idea of grit in his documentary, The Last Dance, where
Mhm.
he used that same kind of thing, that chip on his shoulder, to overcome any adversity.
Mhm.
And it's a powerful thing. It's gotten me where I am today. And again, that I think that comes from just how I grew up and the experiences that I had that ingrained that in me. And now, at 46 years old, I realize that, like, I have the ability that if I wanna do something, I'm gonna fucking do it, and then there's nothing is going to stop me, and it doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm gonna get it done, because that's that determination that I'm just not going to stop until it happens.
Yeah. Do you have you ever heard what alchemy means or alchemist?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I got that when you had said that. I was like, Aaron the Alchemist. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. I actually have you read the book, The Alchemist?
No, I just know what it is.
Oh, it's such
I
a
heard
phenomenal
about it
book.
though. I've heard about the book.
Mean, it talks a lot about what we're talking about in a very,
Mhm.
like, it talks a lot about this stuff and alchemizing energy and, like,
Mhm.
changing, but from a very philosophical
Right,
place.
right,
And
right.
it's just a I've actually gifted and bought and given that book to many people in certain points in their lives where
Mhm.
it has had a huge effect.
Yeah.
It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite books to give to people.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, for those that are listening that don't know what alchemy or alchemist is, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but I always understood it as like let's say, oh, I hate saying the word bad or good, but let's say something a bad or negative experience or something very painful, and then turning it into purpose or something, doing something good out of it. Um, And what I like about alchemy is that, like, or being an alchemist is like so many people have done that and they don't even realize it. They've turned like their pain into good, even if it's in like the quote unquote smallest ways. Like those small ways can be huge to someone else. That's why I'm trying to change my verbiage on using celebrate the little wins because what if that's a big win to you, and what if it's a big win to someone else but it's small to you, especially depending on the day or how you're feeling. Sometimes like your 100% could like look like 60%. So anyways, so yeah, so I bet that like everyone listening right now could, if they like sat down and thought about their lives, I bet they can find at least one thing. I'm sure they can find multiple things, but at least one thing that they did good, even if it was a decision to like you experience pain and therefore you're not going to let someone else experience that. Like, I just think that's so cool and beautiful. And I didn't know that what I was doing was, alchemy until 3 years ago. Like, I always knew I was doing it eventually. I knew that I was doing it for a while, but I didn't know that there was a term for it. And so I think that that's pretty cool.
Your podcast is
Is
alchemy.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing right now, a, a platform for people to tell their stories
Mm.
that can change someone else's life in some small way, make them see a different version, or change their perspective on themselves in a very dark time. Like that is alchemy. What you're doing is alchemy.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. I received that. I received that, Aaron. I'm not bullshitting you. I'm still sick. I really do receive that. I'm still sick. I'm still recovering.
No, I feel it.
Um, oh, thank you. Um, Aaron, I do have a question, and you don't have to dig into this if you don't want to. But
Let's go.
I did have a question. So, when you mentioned the favoritism growing up, could you tell us what that looked like?
Oh, okay.
Like,
Yeah, sure.
I was just kind of like, just like, curious. And I also asked because, you know, I know there's a lot of people, I'm not saying all of them are listening, but I know there's got to be someone listening or will listen to this in the future and they can relate to, the favoritism, especially being, the older of the siblings. You know, yeah, so, you know, if you can share as much as you want, no, I respect boundaries, but could you tell us a little bit of what that looked like? Because there's some people they really don't know um, what favoritism like looks like from an experiential level because they've never experienced it.
The easiest example that I could use, I've used this
Mhm,
several times before,
mhm,
is I grew up, you're going to laugh at this, but it's okay. I grew up as a redheaded stepchild. And literally I had red hair and I was a stepchild, and the feeling that I had is that I was sort of like the bastard child that was not necessarily accepted in the family. I literally lived in the walk-in closet outside of the normal part of my parents' house. Just like Harry Potter lived underneath the stairwell in the Dursleys' house, for all of you Harry Potter fans out there. It was very similar. There were times where I grew up in a very rural environment. On a ranch in Central California, and our old house um, was heated by a wood burning stove. There wasn't like central heat and air and like air conditioning and things like that. It was a very old house and very country, and there were times where when the house got too cold, the door would get shut and I would be left out in the cold in the outside portion of the house, freezing my ass off, trying to, as a little kid, trying to sleep, So there were things like that. Um, there were a lot of things that my brother got that I didn't get. My stepmom was very blatant about, like, I would complain that things weren't fair, and she'd be like, "Yeah, he's my child. You're not my child. So I am gonna give him this and I am gonna do that." And there were a lot of very blatant, you know, favoritism things that happened. Um, I also was the butt of a lot of, I got in trouble for a lot of things that I didn't actually do. I was sort of the scapegoat,
Mhm.
for emotional aggression or whatever it may
Mhm.
be. Um, but like more blatant like favoritism, and I don't I love my brother, and he gets put into a really rough position being the child of my stepmom and my dad, and
Mhm.
we have a small relationship, but not an amazing relationship, and I think that's because it's a really rough position for him to be in. His
Mhm.
childhood was very different than mine.
Right, right.
His perspective was very different than my perspective because he didn't experience any of the you
Mhm.
know, favoritism or lack of favoritism, and
Right.
once I left, because we were 5 years apart, once I left for college or left, when I was old enough to get the hell out of there,
Mhm.
um, I think it was a very different environment. Um, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I can only imagine that the environment changed quite a bit once I left. So, it's you know, there were a lot of things that my brother experienced that I just never did. Does that answer your question?
Yes, 1000%, 1000%, Aaron. Thank you for sharing that. I can so I can relate, to the aspect of favoritism. Like, so I'm the baby, I'm the youngest, but I was always like the black sheep of the family. Um and let's just say, like, when I speak up about when I have spoken, I mean, I still speak up about it, but when I was around that environment and I spoke up about certain injustices being done to me, my brother would defend my mother. you know um Now, when it comes to my father, it's the defense, it's not really there, just because, like, my father was very physically abusive, but it was more on me than my brother. But it was enough for, like, him to not, like, defend father. But when it comes to, like, my mother, he would, like, get angry and defend her regardless. And I think you said it perfectly when you said, we had different experiences. Same like roof, different experiences. Same parent, different experiences. And and so it's like he will never understand. Like, he was the favorite, he was the favorite. Things started shifting when I left for college, and I became a trophy. Um because he was doing things that, like, my parents didn't, or the family didn't. They're very image based. It's very surface level. And that's just how it is. I don't mean that as a bash bashing way. It's just that's how it was. I'm not a fan of it at all. I can't stand surface level, but that's just me. But I was doing the things like making all these I started making all these great grades, and I went off to college and started doing this and getting the master's. Now I'm getting the PhD. Mind you, I don't talk to my family anymore, but for a while, I was just the trophy. You know, that's that was like the way, like, I get any feeling of what it feels like to be an equally important child, was that. And I didn't start feeling that because when I did feel it, it was very, very conditional. It was just depends on the grades. Um, it wasn't until high school. So like the better chunk of the childhood never felt that. And so um but I like what you said. You mentioned, like, there's just been different experiences, like how if if I ask if someone asks him like how childhood was when it comes to the parents, he would say something completely different. Completely different. Like, he knows what a mother is. He knows. I don't. He knows though. And so it's like the responses would be completely different. So thank you for sharing that. I've never met someone who also, well, I mean, I'm sure I've met them, but they never like told me. I just it never came up in conversation. And I've met a lot of people in my life, and so I think this is the first time that, you know, I feel like I could be fully understood if I shared my story. So thank you, because you shared yours. I feel like if I shared mine fully, you could understand, And I'm not saying, like, I feel like most people like would be able to listen to me and sympathize, but like I, I don't I then I just don't think that they could understand from an experiential level. And it's felt differently, like, yes, like, someone could listen and be there for you, and that is amazing. However, it's also a difference when the person has been through and like can experientially understand. So thank you for sharing, Aaron. Thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome. I think what you just described right now was that superpower that we talked about earlier in the film industry is, it I've learned this stuff in I run men's groups, and
Mhm.
I hold space and create containers for men's groups. And one of the things that I kind of realized in doing this work is kind of what you described, is the ability for me, once I share openly and vulnerably, it opens up the door for other people to feel comfortable to share their stories and be vulnerable and feel safe in doing that. I like to call it the waterfall effect, because what happens is, you know, as the facilitator, I will model what this round is gonna be. Like, say we're going to share about a particular event. I will get incredibly vulnerable. I'll go to a place where I may feel emotional and shed some tears. What ends up happening after that is the next person will feel safe and they'll go to that place and they may cry, and the next person, and next thing you know, you have this sort of cascade effect, of a waterfall effect, where the entire group of men are all sharing so vulnerably, they're all shedding tears, and it becomes this massively healing and growing and expressive
Mm.
experience.
Yeah.
And it starts from just getting vulnerable yourself in the very beginning.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'm also the person where people have just shared everything. However, um, especially based off, I mean, I think this is perfectly going to lead us into the next topic, but there's something that you mentioned. You didn't mention it. Yeah, you did mention it verbatim. Something that I've learned, and it's what you just said, something that I've been learning recently is that a lot of men um need to feel safe for their humanity to happen. And by that, folks, I mean, society teaches men, at least in American society. I don't know how it is all over the world, but I know it's like this in many places where it's like, be a man, be a man, be everything but human, but don't you dare be human. You be a man, and that puts you in a box. That's very limiting. Imagine the shape of a human silhouette, folks, and then imagine a shape of a box. The box is smaller than the human silhouette. Okay, you try to stuff that human silhouette in the box. It can't fit. So what do? You cut off some limbs. You cut off the human. You strip the human so that it can fit in the box. All right. And so it's like, where's the rest? Where's the rest? And so, and I hope that example makes sense, folks. I hope you could picture it. But the point is, like, I feel like many, from what I've seen, I'm not saying every man's the same, but from what I've seen, what I've observed is that a reality that, men, um, they need to feel safe enough to be able to show their humanity, because as a child, many of them were taught, if you cry, you're weak. And therefore, that's showing that individual, that's showing that child that they are not safe enough, welcome enough, worthy enough to express their humanity. They cannot be human. They have to be men, and so it's just, yeah, it's like, myself included. I mean, I don't identify as male, as excuse me, as a man anymore, but myself included was, yeah, it's literally like telling a child, I don't accept you if you cry. You're not accepted if you cry. You don't have the right to cry. And so we take that baton and we tell ourselves that. We tell ourselves, don't cry, you got to be tough. That's weak if you cry. That's weak if you apologize. That's weak if you show this or show that. And now I learned that actually that's human, and you actually need to cry. It's very unhealthy if you don't cry for a long time. Yeah, so it's like, but so I like what you like, and I love what you said, and I've learned based off like my experiences as well, is that like, um me sharing, um can create, and not just me, but just I'll just use me as an example. Me sharing, has shown that it's safe to share. um and even I mean, I share regardless. Now I do. I share regardless now, but um I would say maybe like 5 years ago, I still shared, but it's like I didn't, like, if I shared if I felt safe enough. Not necessarily fully safe, but I shared if I felt safe enough. Why? Because I'm like, I think someone needs to hear this. I think the purpose is bigger than me. So I was like, if I feel safe enough, I'm gonna share. Now I just, now I'm just like, I'm gonna share, I'm gonna share, of course there's time and place, but yes. So I think that's very beautiful that what you shared because that is, and all that to say, sometimes people need to see that the environment is safe. They need to see that it's safe for their inner child to come out and that that inner child won't be told to go back in and hide themselves away. So I think that's very beautiful that you do that.
Thank you. Again, it's a superpower. And I think what you're kind of talking about goes really back to generations of programming.
Oh yeah.
I say this thing. I've said this a tons of times, and I can't claim to have thought about or have come up with this. I heard a really awesome quote at a comedy show, actually, and I don't remember the comedian. I wish I knew who it was because it was pretty profound, and I I was like, wow, this is powerful for a comedy show. But what the guy said was, he goes, we were raised by war veterans who were raised by war veterans
Hmm.
who were raised by war veterans. And all of those men were taught to not talk about their emotions, to not talk about the things that they had to do or the things that they experienced while they were out in war. Now, that line of thinking from all of those generations being passed down now has created this sort of species of man or this archetype of men who can't access their emotions. There's another sort of mantra that's like this old school saying that that masculinity is put your head down, bury your emotions, work hard, and provide for your family. And I just want to openly call bullshit on that
Hmm. Yes,
because
please do.
it is not healthy to bury your emotions.
Right.
What happens when those emotions come bubbling up?
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, we talked about this briefly in our pre-interview, but like, the suicide rate for men under 45 is the second leading cause of death.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like 4 times as many men are ending their life than
Hmm.
women.
Yeah.
And that I think that comes from this idea that we need to put our heads down, bury our emotions, work hard, and provide for our family. Or not talk about, separate yourself from your emotions.
Hmm.
Like, don't talk about what is happening, just keep chugging along.
Hmm.
And you get people that you get men that reach their 30s and 40s and they can't take it anymore. It's
Right.
like this time bomb in their gut, in their heart, in
Yeah.
their organs, ready to explode. And
Yeah.
it just takes one argument with a partner
Hmm.
or something happening at work,
Hmm.
and it just becomes this giant explosion
Yeah.
of something that didn't really garner the explosion. But
Hmm.
that thing, the catalyst for that wasn't it had nothing to do with all of this pent up emotion that has been
Hmm.
stored and not
Hmm.
released.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, one of the biggest things that I want to do and one of the biggest things that is my mission, my purpose is to help men sort of get out of their heads and into their hearts
Mm.
and to be able to feel safe to feel to
Mhm.
feel what is going on and not to
Yeah.
brush that aside and not to
Mhm.
separate their consciousness
Mhm.
without their emotion.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
it's a really simple thing, and I do this again. I keep going back to the men's groups, but I really try to teach, like, let's get out of our heads and into our hearts. What are you feeling right now?
Beautiful.
Can you name what that feeling is? Are you
Mhm.
feeling anger? Are you feeling sadness? Are you
Mhm.
feeling joy? Are you feeling shame?
Mhm.
Are you feeling disgust? Are you feeling excitement? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can name it.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
one step closer to being more in touch with your emotions.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's um very powerful. Very, very powerful. being able to learn yourself, to learn your human, learn the humanness that we all are, because humans have emotions, and to drive the suicide uh to rates to show, well, not drive it, but let me see, folks. Here's another staggering statistic. So in America, I don't know about in other places, but I know in America, here in the US, there are more female born citizens than male born citizens. I'm not, and now I do want to recognize in the intersex population, those who are born as both, those who are, because that is a third variation, folks, a third normal variation that we're just not taught about. But there are people that are born with both sets of genitalia, or their hormones are both, or neither. There are people that are born neither. So intersex is a third normal variation, folks. We just aren't taught it, but millions of people are intersex. Okay, got that out the way. So I just wanted to give recognition to them before I say these statistics. But in America, there are more female-born citizens than male-born citizens. However, men make up 70, on average, 76% of the suicides. It's throughout like all the ages. All right. So like let that just sit and, and show y'all that, that whole and I'm sure it could be multiple reasons, but I think a huge, like Aaron was saying, I think one of the like a huge reason is that whole push your emotions aside, and so people do whatever they can to push that aside, whether it's drinking, drugs, or whatever, like the body is not meant to hold in. It's not meant to, like, you're supposed to, like, if you need to cry, cry. If you're suffering from mental illness, depression, there are people that can help. There are people like therapists and whatever, men's groups, things like that. There are ways to, get that out. However, like, that's hard for many people to do. It sounds easy, kinda. Sounds easy just saying it, but that's so hard to do because there has been so much, like, programming. And it took me years to find out, and to, well, not to find out, but to realize that, at first I blamed, and because of my trauma, I blamed so many men. I was just like, ugh, men are so annoying, they suck, like things like that, and it wasn't until recently that I started seeing men as human. But I needed to see men as human, because I kept seeing them as man, and that was dangerous. That was very, I was not shown, I was not taught men as a healthy thing. I was taught humans as I was shown humans as a healthy thing, because, at first I just saw men as beings that are afraid of every emotion except anger, and we see what happens. However, I started to learn that more grace and understanding and love and compassion, and that men are human. And that's how I became to see what I'm about to say next, is that, a lot of this, I would say, I know this is controversial, but I would say all of it didn't start with us, it started to us, and I identified as he, him most of my life, folks. So that's why I'm saying us. But now I identify as all and nothing at the same time. Anyways, um, all pronouns and none of them at the same time. Yeah, universe stuff. But anyways, yeah, because there's programming. Once upon a time, that little kid was just a little kid who knew nothing on this earth, and all we knew is what we were given, what we were taught, what was spewed into us, you know, um, whether by, society, parents, peer pressure, you know, and you know, it breaks my heart because um it breaks my heart because you know within my research that I've been doing with my, I've been doing dissertation level research since my undergrad, but I'm just seeing though a lot of the, uh, I just don't think society has been setting men up um, a fulfilling life. I think they were setting them up for a very limiting life, and that involves a lot of possible mental illness because men are more physically abused than women as kids, and physical abuse, y'all, that damages the brain and the body and the nervous system. It damages the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hippocampus. Like it can damage stuff in the brain and the body. And the brain and body, they're all one. And so yeah, it breaks my heart, and it really also took the suicide statistics for me to for it to break my heart because my heart was like gun set on no, I don't care about men. Men are this, men are that, and of course I know that was my trauma speaking. It was also a little bit of patriarchy going on in there, but it's mostly my trauma speaking. And then it took those statistics for me to be like, okay, men are humans. Men are humans, and I care about humans. And so, and now I'm at a point now where I'm just like, okay, I care about like men as they are, as they are, whatever programming that looks like, but it took me until 6 months ago, folks, to care about men as they are. So it took someone that I'm in love with telling me that I don't fully accept them. And I knew exactly what they were talking about. And that is what I'm just like, it's time. It's time that I care about men. Yeah, because so
It's not actually their fault either.
exactly.
Like I think this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning about parental modeling.
Right,
Like we grow
exactly.
up, I'll use myself as an example. I grew up with a father who was raised by my grandfather to
Right.
never actually express himself and didn't understand how to express his emotions because he was never taught how to.
Yeah.
Because of that, that military grandfather who was the Korean War veteran, who was, in my view, a phenomenal human being,
Mhm.
but was also unemotional
Yeah.
and taught my dad to be unemotional and
Mhm.
taught me to be unemotional.
Yeah.
And probably my great grandfather taught him to be unemotional.
Yeah.
So it's not totally, their
At
fault
all. I don't think it's
because
their fault at all.
it's part patriarchy, like you said, for
Mhm.
sure, and the generational just generational
Mhm.
upbringing,
Yeah.
which I guess is the patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
Like
I blame the system. I blame the system on a lot of things. That's what I learned with my PhD in sociology is like the system is that's the real culprit, and we just
right.
yeah, it
And
really
in
is. Ooh.
2025, we are now starting to see the underbelly of that,
Mhm.
right? When you see these statistics where, like I said before, the second leading cause of death for men under 45 is suicide.
Yeah,
The
that's
number one cause of death is unintentional injury.
mhm.
That
Well,
means that you could,
mishaps. Oh.
yeah, mishaps. That means you could walk outside and something could fall out of the sky and hit you in the head and you die. You could
Mhm.
get hit by a car. You could choke on something. I mean,
Mhm.
there are a million different things that will make up that unintentional
Mhm.
injury. That
Yes.
is right here, and just below it
Mhm.
is suicide.
Right, right.
That is insane to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just comes from how we were taught to process our emotions.
Mhm. Yeah. And then it's like how our parents were taught. And so I went down this cycle of like, now who do I blame? Like who do I direct my frustrations to? And I just, and of course, until I came into my PhD program, I see the system. That's literally where it started, like the system. So I was like, and that's what perpetrates it. And we may blame each other because that's what the system wants. It's we 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 blame the puppet, not the puppet master. That's what I would say.
Right.
But I would argue, and I know this may be controversial, so folks, hear me out. I would argue that it's not their fault, though we are responsible for our actions. You know, however, did it start with us, or did it start to us? And that's where I get into saying, I honestly, in my eyes, I'm sure people can disagree, but I don't think it's their fault. I think everyone's responsible for their actions, 1000%. That's just how the world will work, like if we go to court and they're like, we say it's not our fault, depending on what it is, that court's going to be like, well, no, that's not. But I think I think it takes off a lot of like internal shame for someone to hear it's not your fault. Um, it's not your
No,
fault.
it's not. I spent a lot of time, many years. I'm 46 years old,
Yeah.
and up until probably my early 40s, 41, 42, I
Mhm.
blamed my parents. I
Yeah.
blamed my parents for how I was treated. And I held a lot of resentment. I held a lot of anger, a lot of pain. And there's probably still a little bit of that in there.
Of
I've
course,
done a
it's a
lot of work to
process.
to not do that. But I realized it's not my parents' fault. They
Mm,
were doing the best that they had with what little tools they had to work with.
mm,
They weren't, you know, capable parents, and they didn't get taught how to really show up. And once I realized that, it changed everything for me. So much weight was lifted off of my shoulders. Just the understanding that, like, they were doing the best they could. It wasn't very much. And I'm not going to discount all of the things. Like, we still have to hold, there's still a responsibility. You still have responsibility for your actions,
mm,
but I don't have to, like, demonize them,
mm,
my parents, for how they chose to, raise me.
mhm,
Like, they didn't know any better, and they were doing the best that they could.
yeah, right.
And there's
Yeah,
freedom in that.
yeah. There is freedom. There is so much freedom in that. That is so true. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay. For me, for my parents, see, like I would say in the middle of my healing journey, I took on that towards just people, and including my parents, that that mindset. And then it came to the fact though that I asked my father how was his childhood. Was his parents horrible? And he said no, they were great. They were amazing. And to be honest with you, I do believe him that yes, he did have great parents. He did. And so I'm just in my head like, oh, okay, so you just all right, cool. But you're just all right. All right. Well, hmm. But I now see that, well, okay, be honest with you, like I know some people, they don't know that maybe their childhood wasn't the best, or maybe they didn't learn the best. But no, I truly do. He's like one of the I think he's the only person that I truly do believe though that his childhood was great. Very, very privileged childhood, I'm assuming. Um he just always had lots of money and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not saying like money is like an all be all like of a good parent, but I'm just saying like he was very set up in life and didn't know what it feels like to just, I don't know, let me not go there, because to make what I just said make sense, I have to go off on a whole like freaking tangent that'll take away like from this conversation. But now my mother, on the other hand, she didn't know. Right, she didn't know. However, she chose not to know. Multiple times. There have been multiple, just, I mean, more than 200 times. I'm not even joking. I've asked her, let's go to therapy. Let's go to family therapy. There'll always be some excuse. Oh, I don't have the money. Now, mind you, to bring context better, she has a lot of money. I On the outside, I grew up with with money, but I never got to experience that money, folks. My parents had money. I never got to experience. People are like, "Oh, but look at the house you live in." It was hell inside that house, and so everyone just thought everything was fine because they have a lot of money and stuff like that, and they're wealthy people. Um, Mind you, anyways, she would say, "Oh, I can't. We can't go to therapy because I don't have the money." Mind you, she comes with a new car, brand new car, same year, make and model of that year. She comes in with that. I ask her again. She says she doesn't have the money. Oh, we got a new couch. We got a new lamp. Oh, she got the house repainted. Didn't need repainting, but she just wanted to do it because why not? Oh, she bought a $400 lamp that she doesn't use. We never used that lamp. It was literally there for decoration. And so, oh, and then this other one blew my mind. Okay, and this is what, and she's also narcissist. I'm not even just saying that because it's the cool thing to say. I truly think that that is her mental illness, based off the DSM. Um, is so I we had this huge argument, this huge blow up, because I was just like, we need to go to therapy because it was my fight to save what wasn't a relationship with my mother, to save the nothing that was there, because I wanted a mother so bad, and I just couldn't fathom how a mother could be there physically yet not want to be your mother, whereas like other people that I've met, their mother just died, so of course they couldn't be there because they were gone. I couldn't fathom at that time, fathom that being my reality, where the mother is there physically but choosing not to be, but choosing to be there for the sibling. And so she was a great mother to him. She wasn't perfect because no human is perfect. We don't come to this earth to be perfect, folks. But she could be that for him, but not for me. And I just couldn't fathom it. And so I was just like, okay, let's go to therapy because I know I'm not right in everything. I want the growth and stuff like that. She's not right in everything. We know that. And so I'm just like, let's go to therapy. Like, I want a relationship with you. She said, I don't have the money. I walked to her room and I showed her, I was like, you have a wall full of Christmas gifts that you bought from people. Her room is the biggest room in the house. What was, because I don't live in that house, but her room was the biggest house, everyone, to give you context. Her room was bigger than the master bedroom. Huge, huge room. All right. The wall was long. She had Christmas gifts for everyone, trying to please everyone, but had Christmas gifts for everyone lined up the whole wall. I'm not exaggerating, folks. Why? Because it hurt me so much to see that others were so much more important than me. That hurt the hell out of me. And so I'm telling you, folks, I'm not exaggerating. The wall was long, okay? Huge room, all lined up with Christmas gifts. And so I just pointed and I was like, I thought you said you didn't have money. Like, I don't know what about that just did it. She's like, fine, we'll go to therapy. We went one time. She did not like it because the therapist was holding her accountable for everything she was trying to run away from. And that's what she was doing. She was running away. She was running away, for years, years. And so her, I'm just like, she doesn't know, but she didn't want to know. She had ample opportunity, and it's not like she didn't have the fun. Like, she didn't want to. That was like her actions. She didn't want to know. But I do understand though that a lot of people, they were just doing the best they can. Me, I was put. A lot of kids didn't know about family therapy, but I knew, and I was pushing for it. Mind you, when my almost stepdad died tragically, Folks, y'all remember that, right? When he got hit by a train riding his motorcycle and it exploded. Awful. She went to therapy. So she's not afraid of therapy, she's afraid of accountability. And that is when I'm just like, when it comes to it, just I think that I don't know, honestly. Like she had like the tools, and I could see that if she was how she treated my brother, if she treated that for me, like I wouldn't be having this type of conversation right now. So that's what that's it's kind of tricky, because I'm just like, okay, like she did the best she could with him, and he- like what I saw and what he says, my brother says, like she was a pretty good mom. And so I'm just like, so what, I don't know what to say about her, like saying like, oh, she just didn't know better, or it wasn't her fault necessarily, because she she just, it just seemed, because she was it to my mother, to my brother, and so I just was like, interesting. So I just held her accountable, and I just don't talk to her no more. I know my worth, and I'm not gonna fight. I shouldn't have to fight for love.
Let me ask you something.
Yes, what's up, Aaron? I'm sorry. It was that
That's
that
okay.
Key and Peele episode.
I love it. I say it all the time.
Okay,
AA
good.
Ron. I use it
Ron.
all the time.
Okay, good.
But I want to ask you something.
Yeah, what's up?
It's just a very quick question.
Okay.
If you didn't have those experiences with both of your mom and your dad, do you think that we would be having this conversation on this podcast called
1000%.
Vulnerability Time right now?
Not at all. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the stuff that I've been through, if I didn't go through it, like this podcast would not exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, what I think, and this may be a little esoteric or woo woo or whatever you call it, but I truly believe that we, and I'm going to say we because I feel this about myself as well, is that we have to go through these experiences in order to feel all of those things, in order to get us
True.
to where we are today.
That's true.
We are like you and I both. I would put us in this category. I don't like to use boxes, like you said, but we have a mission. It's very clear. You are on a mission to help other people to not have to experience the same things that we experienced in our lives and to better society. You can't do that without having these experiences. Without going through those things that you went through, you wouldn't be here right now. And that's the gold in those experiences.
That's true. Ron, you're completely right. The universe has been nudging me on that for a minute now. I think that, speaking on the universe level, speaking on, soul contracts, I think that this is what I've been feeling the universe say to me. Is that, that was one of her purposes for my life, was to help push me on this path for others. Because she has the tools to be the mother that I've always wanted, always needed. She chose not to. Just hardcore. I mean, she would come up with the most wild excuses. Oh my gosh. But not but. However, that is something that's been on my like mind lately, is that like, because I sometimes I just sit and I was like, well, what was the purpose of her? Why did I choose her as a parent? Like, what was that purpose? Like, what was the purpose? You know, um, and I'm thinking, yeah, it was that I had to be hurt in the right direction. I had to be hurt in the right ways, harmed in the right ways. And as a human, folks, I am so not for it. Like and as a human, we have every right to be upset and hate the hurt that was done. Like that is valid. That is valid to go through that process. So I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying like, having died and been on the other side, folks, I did get to see what it looked like before incarnating into this earth during this time. And I got to see that, and I'll talk to Aaron about this tomorrow, but I did get to see, I chose these parents, I chose this family for coming into this earth. I didn't get to see why at that time. Because I think that was something for me to learn on this earth to help my journey better, for me to learn at the right time. And I won't know fully why until I go back to see the soul contract. But I'll just say choosing them was very strategic, and I've been learning why it was strategic. Um, and now, will I do that again? No, I need. I need parents. Like, what? I will never incarnate again without parents. Like, I need loving parents. But, like, and I won't be coming back to Earth. Yes, folks, Aaron has a massive point. Like, I mean that on a spiritual level. Like, I don't mean it on a cliche way. Like, oh, this made you stronger. Oh, that. Like, to me, I'm just like, whatever. I don't. That's but it turned into alchemy. It literally turned into like alchemy. It literally did, because if the experiences that happened to me, if I had love through those experiences, this podcast wouldn't exist. If I had love, y'all, during those experiences, this podcast would not exist. I would not, all that pain led me on this path of suicide. And it's because of the path of suicide that I learned the statistics of suicide. And I get to feel from an experiential level how important it is to speak up. How many people out there, feel as though they can't speak up, feel as though they are alone. I know what that feels like on such a dark level. So that I just feel like that amount of darkness, there needs to be light. So it's like alchemy. So Aaron has a huge point. Honestly, Aaron has a huge point, and I needed to hear it right now. I needed that confirmation because spirit and universe have been nudging me with that for a couple of weeks now, and Aaron just says it, and so I'm just like, that's confirmation.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I can only use my own example, and I can relate to everything that you're saying, but I think that I am put here to feel all of the things that my generations, my ancestors weren't able to feel. My grandparents, my parents, I am the only one that's capable of actually feeling those things, processing those things, working through those things, and then alchemizing it into helping others. And that is my job. That's my mission here. And it took me 40 something years to figure it out,
And
but
most
now
times,
I know.
yeah,
And that's why we're here talking about this. This is one little step in the journey of helping people and getting the story out there, getting the word out there, and helping people to realize, like, you don't have to do this alone. Like, and you don't have to, you can actually talk about this. There are people out there that are want to help. You were one of those people, Josias. I am one of those people.
keep
Like,
saying it right.
we're doing this right now, like with this podcast. It shifts the paradigm, it shifts people's perspectives. One episode can change someone's life. That's power.
Mhm. That's beautiful.
So as much as hard as it may be, there's a bigger mission. There is a bigger mission and you're on it and you're doing it. You're feeling the feels. You're experiencing the experiences. You're learning, you're educating, you're growing yourself so you can help others. That is the most amazing thing, to be of service to others.
Mm, that's beautiful. I received that, Aaron. I receive that on a spiritual level. I feel my
Yes.
vibration has shifted. I receive that on a spiritual level. I really, really do. I appreciate that. To hear that reminder. I really do. And speaking of that, I've been dying to say this. Um, to all the men listening, I want you to know you are worthy. You're
Mm.
worthy of experiencing all of you. You're worthy of learning all of you. You are worthy enough. I'm telling you, you are worthy enough, folks. Men out there listening, you are worthy. You are not weak. You are human. You are so important. You are so needed. You are so needed. You are so lovable. I'm telling you, you are so lovable. Trust me, from a spiritual point, I'm telling you, you are lovable more than you can ever imagine as a human. Because when you leave this earth, you'll really get to experience it. But if you're not feeling lovable, I this is your sign. You are lovable. You are so worth the healing. You are so worth learning yourself. You are so worth feeling your emotions. And then you have an inner child in there. That child is worthy of love. Okay? So, yeah, someone needed to hear that. Someone out there is struggling right now with whether to be human or to be man. Okay? You're worthy. I don't know what else. Like you are worthy. I just kept feeling those words in my spirit. Someone needs to hear that they are worthy. You are not weak. And I'm so proud of you for still being here. I'm so proud of you for still breathing. All right? I really am, because it's not easy, especially when, we've been programmed. Um, so I'm proud of you for even just turning on a podcast called Vulnerability Time. Like, seriously, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate these things. Let's celebrate these things. Um,
I would add one more thing,
please do. I was just going to ask.
that it is not weakness to ask for support. You are not weak to ask for support. You can speak up. Any man out there, if you're struggling, it is not weakness to ask for help. There are plenty of organizations out there. There are tons of people that want to help. I am one of those. That's my job. I literally am building a business around helping men to express their emotions, to feel their feelings. So if you're struggling out there and you need support, call me. Like, I will help you. I will help you. If I can't do it, I will find somebody in your area that will help you to be able to feel those things and to talk to somebody about what's going on.
Wow. Yes. Folks, Aaron's information will be in the episode. Not maybe not the phone number.
No.
They'll have to like I guess reach out to you. You can go from there.
Yes.
Yeah. But any links that Aaron sends me will be in the episode description below. So go check them out. Um, but yeah. Wow. Folks, I would love to have Aaron back on this show this season. Aaron, we would love to have you back.
I'll come back anytime. This was
Okay.
such a great conversation. We got to some pretty deep, vulnerable things here,
Yeah,
and
vulnerability.
it was powerful and beautiful. Like I would come back anytime.
Okay, great. So I'll see you tomorrow. But I'll let you know tomorrow. After tomorrow, after our conversation tomorrow, we can
Yeah,
figure something out because there's something else that I would like to have do an episode with you on about. Um what do I was gonna I in this season September 10th. So I like to have you on anytime before then.
yeah, I'm available. Yeah, let's talk about it after our call tomorrow,
Yeah.
and we can figure out a time and date and all the things to
Yeah.
make it happen.
Yes. We'll make that happen. Okay. Folks, y'all know I like to end with a little challenge. I'm really trying to stick to my guns this season on it. So, okay, tell one or two people that they are important. So, and that includes yourself. All right?
Mm,
Not too much, not too many people, right? It's not too much people. Just one or two, you know? Not a whole workload. And that includes yourself. Hey, Aaron, I think you're extremely important. And I
thank
know
you.
that you know that, but you are so important. Seriously.
Thank you for
Thank you for
saying
what
that.
you do.
I really received that. It's I think something I needed to hear today. I also think you are very important, and this show is very important, and what you're doing and the experiences that you've had are very important.
I receive that. I really do receive that. I appreciate. Thank you. Damn, thank you. Hey, Ron, I really received that. I really do. Because it's like sometimes you just need to hear it. Sometimes you just need to hear it.
Yeah.
Um, Alrighty, folks. So I will see y'all next episode for whatever that will be. So stay tuned for Aaron's part two, or Aaron's second episode on the show. Aaron will be back sooner rather than later. Uh, so yes, and information in the episode description below. I love you all. And thank you for being here. Remember to share this podcast because you never know whose life you might save. You never know, and they might not need it, but they might send it to someone else who might need it. And it's like a kind of like a loving virus, something like that. Okay.
They might not know that they do need it until
Exactly.
they listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and you might need it in like a year from now. You never know. Exactly. Yeah. So it's always good to have the tools. So alrighty folks, I'll see y'all next time. Bye.